If you like small form factor, if you want to start gaming today, I think I got the build for you. So if you've been looking for quality music and sound effects for your content, check the link down in the description, get over to Upbeat and start downloading your 10 free tracks today. Welcome to 2020 Tech for You. If you're a subscriber, I'd just like to thank you for returning. If you're not a subscriber, I really hope we gain a subscriber today. So what we're doing is building a really small form factor PC. This is a great work from home PC, great for school. You could probably do some light content creation. You could do some pretty light gaming too. We will test some games. Now, if you're here for a build that later on you could probably put a DGPU, a discrete graphics card, you probably won't be able to do this. You'd have to jump through some hurdles and it wouldn't be worth it, not with this case. The rest of the build, yes, you could go get a different case than this case, something bigger that would fit a graphics card. Then yes, you can take this build further. If you like really small form factor and this is something that's going to be bolted to the back of your monitor, or you just want to put it there and it's not in the way at all, this is going to be a great build. So this would be a case for a mini ITX build that will fit a graphics card. I did do a build in this case with a 2060 Super Founders Edition. So if you're looking to add a graphics card later, this is more of a case you need to look into. I'll put a link to this video up in the corner. This whole setup is less than a graphics card. At Micro Center, the 6700 XT Red Devil by Power Color was, I think, $900. So that one component is more than all of the parts you see here. And there are other parts I will run off where you could save money. The motherboard here was $200. I found one for $100. You know, so there's places you can cut and bring this price down even more than how much this one costs right here. And with that said, let's get into the parts that we have on the table. First, we have our AMD Ryzen 5600G. This is a 6-core, 12-thread processor. It's got a base clock speed of 3.9, and it's got a boost clock of 4.4 gigahertz. I'll put more information about it right here. It's a good CPU, and these are the newer Ryzen CPUs, so they are the 3rd gen processors. They're Ryzen 3, excuse me. They're not scarce, they're not hard to find, so please do not give more than what they're worth. A lot of people are putting these on OfferUp, Craigslist, and eBay for nearly double the price. Do not pay more than what this processor is going for right now. The cooler. This is a Noctua NH-L9A-AM4. Now the AM4 is very important. If you're going on the AMD platform, make sure you get the AMD variant of this cooler. Now this cooler, the reason why we went with it and we're not sticking with the Wraith cooler, I think it's the Spire, I forget, but it's the Wraith cooler. That's the ones the AMD processors come with. Not all of them, but this one does come with it. The cooler's height is too tall for this case. Always make sure to check the sizes on all the parts you're gonna purchase before you buy them, because your case might not fit them. So I have the iconic brown on brown with the chrome fin stack and everything, but they do come in a black fan, black fin stack and everything. I think that one's 10 bucks more. And please don't forget, all this stuff you see on the table and we're going to be using today will be down in the description using our Amazon affiliate link. And if you use the link, we do receive a small commission. So thank you in advance if you do decide to use it. That really does help the channel. Oh, and that's at no charge to you, by the way. So you can purchase this with all black. That way, if you don't like the aesthetic of it, you can just go all black and be done with it. There is a mod where you could put the Wraith cooler in there if you want to, but that's only if you're comfortable with Dremels. If you're comfortable with a Dremel, then you definitely could fit this cooler that your CPU comes with, and that's another way you could save 50 bucks. Our RAM. These are the 3200 Crucial Ballistic RAM sticks. If you're looking to get into overclocking a little bit, then you might want to look into these. Our motherboard. Aorus B550i Pro AX. With the B550 boards, a lot of people are going to tell you you need to update the BIOS to run Zen 3 or the 5000 series AMD processors. Not always true, depending on the revision of the motherboard. If you pay attention right here on your motherboard, you will see that it says 3rd gen and AMD Ryzen desktop ready. And it will say on the bottom, not compatible with AMD Ryzen 5 3400G and Ryzen 3 3200G. Well, this isn't a brand new case. It's the Inwin Chopin, I think they call it. I've heard people call it the Chopin or the Chopin or Chopin. I don't know. I call it the Chopin. I might be wrong. So if you are planning, again, to get a graphics card, do not buy this case because you will not be able to fit one in here. M.2 SSD by Inwin. So this little guy is only 256 gigs, but this is gonna have our OS on it. Some of the other software he's gonna use more or not. So that'll be sitting on this one. And we got an SSD. I believe this is only 120 gigabytes. This is just one of mine. I just put it here for show. But again, links down below if you're looking for things like this. Make sure your motherboard fits in here too. Again, any parts down below that are alternate will fit this case. Make sure that you have tools, but something with a magnetic tip is definitely something you want to look into. So if you're buying a Phillips screwdriver because you're gonna need one, double make sure that it's got a magnetic tip. Let's start the build. Where do we start? I say we start with the RAM. I'm starting with the RAM. Just messing with you guys about the whole RAM thing. We're gonna start with the motherboard. So let's get our motherboard out. And this is the way you wanna start any PC build if this is your first time building one. Now, when you're handling a motherboard, you wanna pick it up from the heatsink, hold it from the edges. So first thing we're gonna do is put our CPU in. Let's open this up. Right here, this metal bar looks like an emergency brake. You're gonna wanna pull it down and up because it's locked under here. So, and then I want you to pay attention to the socket. Right here. Now, if you notice, it says AM4 socket, left to right. Your CPU will say AMD Ryzen. You want to make sure that you could read the Ryzen and AM4 socket just like this. They're both going left to right. Now, also a gold triangle right there, and you're going to want to line that up with a triangle on the motherboard. You see it right there. Making sure this brace is all the way up, and you're going to want to slowly line up the CPU with the socket. You do not want to put any force. You just want it to go in the socket. You're just going to line it up and let it go in slowly. And once it's in there, what you could do is you could do one of these if you want. So let's come all the way down with the handle, starting to feel pressure, a lot of pressure. Now, right when you come all the way down, it's not in yet. You've got to go this way, under, and it's on. So straight down won't do it. As soon as you get far down enough, you're gonna come back a little bit and slide it under. You could do this again, make sure it's fine. All right, that's your CPU installed. Do not flip the motherboard around and shake it to make sure the CPU's in. You can't see the pins, it's sitting flush in the socket, it's in. Let's install our NVMe SSD M.2. This is where your first M.2 will go in, but you could put it in either one. See this right here, this blue stuff? You're gonna have to peel this off. Do not leave this on. You want this off because you will not get the benefits of this block. But you're gonna wanna make sure you place this properly in the slot. So we took that off just to get it done. If you look really good, right here, you'll see some gold pins, then the housing, and then more pins. That corresponds with the gap. So what you're gonna wanna do is take this, and you're gonna wanna go in at an angle. Now, also, I'm sorry, please be careful. You wanna make sure you get it into that bottom slot down there, not the top hole right here, because that's actually where that brick is gonna go. That's gonna cover this. So you're gonna wanna go to 45-degree angle into the slot. Can't see, there we go. And we're gonna wanna push it in a little bit. Yep, there it goes. Now you're gonna see it stands on its own, and watch this. That means you got it in. So there's a bolt right down here, all the way down. It's gonna line up. We're going to take this, we're going to put it inside of its hole that was on top. We're gonna allow that to come up just a little bit. Take that down, making sure that that screw is lined up in the hole here, where it's supposed to be, and tighten it down. Now, once it stops, just barely go 5%, that's it, good enough. So now what we're going to do is take this large piece again and place it on top. And they gave us some very long screws. Let's get our cooler applied. So for AMD, I say AM4, and I think Intel just says Intel. And I have a name of all the sockets that it's compatible with. And that is your retention bracketry off. And now it's time to put our new bracketry on. We need to apply our thermal compound. Now, usually what I do is before I put thermal paste, even though this is a brand new CPU, when I did this, I put grease on top of the IHS, the integrated heat spreader. I like to clean it off. Now with all that clean, let's apply our thermal paste. Go right where the Z is, or the center, and you're gonna wanna put a rice grainish pea sizes. And then you're gonna wanna make sure the tip touches the CPU, and you kinda just scrape it against the CPU to make sure you don't get a string coming off and going everywhere. So what you're gonna wanna do is put one screw in here like this. So you're gonna want the Phillips head on the same side as this right here. Let's bring this up to our board. Like that. Making sure all those holes like that line up. And then we're gonna wanna bring this down on top. Lined up. But now you gotta flip this. But I say only go so far and try to finger tight this one. Try to have your screwdriver somewhere near, unlike Joseph. And you're gonna wanna give it a few turns, but not tight. Get us another screw at the bottom, but let's go somewhere opposite to that screw. And let's screw this one in. Just till it catches thread, then stop. Now once it catches thread and this is on here, give it a little jiggle and a little press down. But you wanna start spreading the paste under there. And now we could place the rest of our screws in the other sides. I usually hold down at the center of the fan and put this in. Notice how the first two we put are at opposing sides. And we did not tight, we just went till it caught and we stopped. Now, we're gonna go back to the one we started with and we're gonna go until it fully stops. And then go cross pattern, go till it really stops. If you're putting a lot of strength, yeah, you're doing it wrong. Once it stops, just give it like 5% more. And guess what? Your fan is installed. Now, if you don't like where this ended up and you went the wrong way with this and this is pointing down, you don't want it there, not a big deal. You could just remove these screws. You remove it just like so. And you could put the fan like this. And you're right next to your connection. Now, what you want to pay attention to RAM is really simple. See, this has a gap tooth also with these gold pins, that gap tooth. If you pay attention in the DIMM slot right here, is where your RAM slot, pop those up. Right here, I don't know if you can see it, but there's something blocking that slot. Like that would match up, or would it? Nope, like that. So you would want to, a lot of people go from the bottom. Oh wait, these open too, wow. So all four are open on this board, and you're gonna wanna line it up in the channel, put it all the way down, put your board down, take your thumbs like so, place them on both sides. Now Trident has these sharp edges, so hold it from the RGB the LED diffusers, and with both thumbs, even pressure. Done. The click is all you need. Do the same thing with this, align it up. Now that's your RAM installed. Let's remove our case from its box. So another cool thing is this thing is made of aluminum. This is where your SSDs will go. And here's all the wiring we're gonna need for our front I/O. Our motherboard power right here, 24 pin. Inwin 150 watt bronze rated power supply. It couldn't have been gold at least. So what you're gonna wanna do is get all these wires out of your way. But see, this is why you wanna get the CPU cooler and everything done, because look. So how your motherboard is going to go inside your case is like this. This is the back, this is the back, so it's going to want to go in like that. But I like to do outside of the case as much as I can, because a lot of these things are going to be hard to get. The 24 pin, SATA connect, things like that. Well, the SATA connection might not be that bad. But also, if you notice, there's some holes back there I might be able to use. Might is a key word, but it doesn't really matter. You just want to make sure nothing's going to be hitting the fan. So let's see what we could pull off and get plugged in now. We're going to take this and run it along the top. We don't want anything touching the fan. What other wires we got? USB 3.2. Right in, it's done. That's it. All right, let's get our 24 pin. So yeah, if you have a few more SATAs, you could take this one SATA that's coming off the 24 pin, connect it into this right here. And now instead of one, you'd have two. So if you need an extra one, there it is. So now I got one SATA in because I'm only hooking up one SSD. And now we're gonna take our 24 pin and we're not gonna cross any wires or anything. And yeah, that's everything connected. This is where you gotta be a little careful. Do not shove anything in. Take your time. Come out through the bottom here. You're gonna see a big opening between your power supply and the case. That should help. Put what you can through there. Try to bring it in at an angle. Do not put pressure because you do not want to cut any wires. So take your time and work it in. There's a gap right here down by the power supply, so try to bring some of these wires down if you must. There we go. See, just use that channel and you'll be fine. And once your rear I/O is nice and level with the back right there, you're good to go. Mine looks a little weird, but hey, that's it. Your case, your motherboard is now in. So you're gonna have a few areas you're gonna need screws. One right up there. You see that chrome circle? One up there, one down here, and one over here. This is why a magnetic screwdriver will come in handy big time. Because you're gonna take the screw like this. You're gonna wanna screw it in and make sure there's no wires blocking that hole. Because if you cut through wires, it's done. And these do not need to be super tight. Go till they stop and give them an extra 5%. If you pay attention to the top of the motherboard, you're going to see those slits leading to the rear side. That's going to be important for the SATA power from your PSU and the SATA cable. So we're going to take this one and we're going to find the best way to get it through there. There it is. Get it all the way in. You want to get as much slack as you can. Be careful. Again, you do not want to cut wires. And we're going to make sure that it's going up and around things. We don't want a mess. Now our SATA wire could go through another area I seen right about there. I think I went through the same spot, just to let you know if you're curious. Once your SATA wires are through, you're good to go. So let's start with our 24 pin. We're going to take it and we're going to shove it up in here. Like so. Being careful, I know I said shoving, but still you want to be careful. You don't want to cut nothing, so just get it up in somewhere where it won't get in the way when you do shut the panel. Now you could get creative with some zip ties, you know what I mean? You don't have to do it like I'm doing. You could get creative with zip ties. Yep, and it's in. I mean, you could do this a lot better than me if you want. You could take your time, make your wires look nice and neat and all that, which I will, but not bad. Look at that. You'll figure it out, I promise. Let's turn this thing around. Let's take our M.2, our SSD, plug in our SATA, plug in our power. And the trays do come out so you can screw them in properly. So you'll see the Phillips head here and the Phillips head here. Remove those, these trays will remove, and then you screw the SSDs. The screws will go on the reverse side, SSD will sit like this. So there's your holes, and it will sit like something like that. And that will go in here like this. And you would be done. A lot of people don't believe in putting their panels on because it's bad luck until you at least get booted into the BIOS. So let's do that before we boot into the BIOS. All right, so it's done, and it was not that bad to put together. The Inwin A1 mini ITX case that I bought, the one that has the charger that goes on the top, the key charger, did a video on that one. I feel like that case was a little bit harder to build in, but there was more to do with that one. You had to install the fans on the bottom, you had to find the channels to run the wiring through. So that case was a little bit harder. This is the case I'm actually talking about right here. It really and truly wasn't that bad. If this is your first mini ITX build and you decide to go with something like this, I don't think you should have too much trouble. If you just be careful with the wires. So with that said, let's get it started. So if you're at this point, you should have a USB stick with a clean install of Windows. If you have your installation media, put it into any USB place that you want, and get ready to start installing Windows. Let's get this thing started up and see if it even fires up. So here we go. All right, RAM is lit up. Let's see if we can get into the BIOS. That was fast. I wasn't expecting it. This should have cycled a few times because that is a brand new processor. All right, so B550 AORS Pro AX, BIOS version F10, AMD Ryzen 5 5600G with Radeon graphics, 16 gigs of RAM. It's got both of our RAM right here, 8 gigs of 2133. I know I said it's 3600, and they are, but when you first turn on your computer, they're not going to be running at those speeds that are going to be on the box or whatever's on the RAM itself on that little sticker. Most of RAM is going to start off at 2133. I think it's a just in case precaution. So I think they do this to make sure if anything happened that it'll boot. You know what I mean? If it just starts off at 3600 and let's say the motherboard you have does not handle higher speeds than say 2800 or 3200 and you slap in 3600 or 4000 or even higher, I think they go up to like 5000. This is a precaution. I believe that if anything, the computer will boot into the BIOS, and here you can put them to the speed. Windows updates. So what you want to do is get into Windows first before you do this part right here. The only reason you should go into the BIOS at the beginning is to make sure everything is showing up. All your RAM, your CPU, all the cores, just making sure everything here, the SSDs are showing up, everything. Then you should just go save and exit, don't touch nothing here, and continue installing Windows. Once Windows is installed, check for updates and start installing all the updates. I'm gonna get Ryzen Master on here, I'm gonna get some other things on here, some games on here, and then we're gonna start seeing how this processor and this case work out. So once I finish downloading all the Windows updates, downloading all the drivers for the motherboard, for AMD, just all the drivers needed to get this, ready to start playing video games and start benchmarking and start using it a little bit. I went into the BIOS, I enabled a PBO, I enabled a few things, just some regular basic stuff, no manual overclocking. I did not do nothing like that. And I only ran a few benchmarks. I ran, I think, was it 3 games? I ran 4 games. No, 3 games. I ran 3 games. One of them is Dark Souls 3. I know, I'm sorry, I know it's an older title, but it's actually a game that I really love. So if I was getting into PCs for the first time, this would be something I'd like to know, because this might be the best way for me to get into gaming in 2021 when GPUs are just crazy. So we'll start with the Cinebench R20 score. It scored a 4205 multi-core. It ran at 4.24 gigahertz. And the temps for all the cores, mostly like 5 of the cores were like in the low 40 Cs, like 42C, 44C. One core hit 76C. This is all perfectly fine. And I also did Heaven benchmark. I know it's a little bit older, but a lot of people still use it as a benchmarking tool. I had it at 1080p. The score was a 623 with an average frame rate of 30.8 frames per second. Ultra settings, you know, just something if you know about Heaven, that might give you an understanding of how the 5600G runs with a 150 watt power supply, which by the way was fine. It never really went above 130 watts, at least not from what hardware info showed me. I had that running the whole time. That's how I got my temperatures, and I got all my my wattages was from hardware info. Dark Souls 3 in 1080 with a mix of high, medium, and low settings, and it was getting 35 frames per second with some dips down to about 25 frames per second, but it was playable-ish. I wish it was more holding a 40 FPS, because this game does cap out at 60 FPS, but yeah, you could play it. It's gonna be stuttery. If you go to all low settings though, you will get closer to 43, 44 frames per second, which was better because it was more steady holding that. It occasional dip down to about 39 frames per second. And if you don't mind playing Dark Souls at, it was a 720, yeah, at 720p at low and some medium settings, it was actually holding 60 frames per second with the occasional dip down to about 55 frames per second. While I was playing Dark Souls, it didn't pull more than about 105 watts, so not too bad there. It was 66C on the CPU and 55C on the GPU, so on the integrated graphics. So it really ran really cool no matter what. Tomb Raider at 1080, the average was 34 frames per second, low settings with some tearing and some stutters. It played, but it's not something I would recommend. It wasn't really good at all. It was, yeah, I remember that one. It stuttered pretty good, actually. Had a lot of tearing. At 720, it averaged about 48 frames per second, lows of about 39 frames per second, with some stuttering, but it wasn't pretty. Again, it was 720. It's running these games. These are actually turning on. If you try anything from Intel, their integrated graphics are just plain garbage, but they're not made for gaming. Intel never said those were gaming integrated graphics on their CPUs. Those are more for troubleshooting. Those are more for like workstations that don't need a GPU, like at your local grocery store or something. They're not made for it. So even though I say they're garbage, I can't say that Intel did anybody wrong, because they didn't. And even though AMD has pushed this as a gaming CPU, and a lot of SI system integrators are pushing this CPU as a gaming CPU, and they're selling standalone PCs with just this in it, and they might have like Assassin's Creed Valhalla all over the machine or something, that is just plain robbery. Do not buy this CPU if you think you're gonna go into it playing 1080p medium to high. You're looking at 1080p low, maybe a medium, and you ain't gonna be seeing those 60 frames per second. It's just not gonna happen, at least not in any of the titles I played. But these are more AAA titles. Once you start getting into like CSGO and things like that, that's when actually, believe it or not, you're gonna start getting a lot higher frame rate. It's gonna be a way more enjoyable game. And you can actually turn on some settings at medium and high here and there. And you'll see, what was it? At 1080p, medium mixed with some high settings, 122 to about 130 frames per second. And it looked great and it ran decent. So if it's not like a AAA game, you're gonna be doing fine. If this is for school, if this is for work, or if this is something just to hold you off until you actually get a GPU, well, that's fine. That's fine. But caveat to that, and that's what we're gonna get into next. So actually, let's jump into that right now. So the 5600G is a very good processor, 6 core, 12 thread. It boosts like 4 point something gigahertz. It's a great CPU for this right here. If you're planning to eventually add a GPU, do not buy this processor. You're better off going with the 5600X because you're gonna be losing half of the L3 cache, and that means a lot for gaming. You're gonna be getting 16 megabytes of L3 cache, where with like the 56 or the 5800X, you're gonna be getting the 32 megabytes of L3 cache. And with the 5900X, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the 5900, and the 5950 I think is 64 megabytes of L3 cache. If I'm wrong, I'll put a notation up here. But you see what I'm saying? You're losing half of that L3 cache. Now, if you're using it again for this and CSGO and you don't mind playing at those settings because you're bored, then fine, no big deal. But if you're planning to get an ATX size case or even a mini ATX case where you can actually fit a graphics card, you're better off with the 3700X, the 3600 on Zen 2 with a graphics card, because that's going to be more or less comparable to what you're going to get. And the 3700X is an 8-core 16-thread processor. That's why I say it's better off if you're thinking of a discrete graphics card down the road. And we're going to talk about actually a similar build like this right now and how much this one costed, the different routes you might want to take than going with this route that I went right here. I will list all the parts that I have for this build right here, and I'll put the price. But I also have a couple other options where you're gonna save a few $100s. You wanna go with the fastest RAM kit available because you will see a difference. So make sure you go with the fastest RAM as you could get. Now, if you wanna do this, but you don't wanna buy this motherboard, and because you really don't need to, it really doesn't matter if you're not planning to overclock and things like that. You could go with probably the most bog standard motherboard. So here's some alternatives you could go for. I wrote them down. So for a motherboard choice, you could go with the Gigabyte A520i AC. It has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. It's about $120 new on Amazon, but I did see them for about $95 to $100. If you're going with the same case, the same NVMe, but you go with like another RAM kit, there's the OLOY, I forgot, I think they're called OLOYs. They're DDR4, 2x8 sticks, 16 gig sticks, 3000 megahertz, cache latency 16, 60 bucks. So yeah, the Tridents were like, what were they, $99, and the Crucials were like $79. So you could save money here just by changing the RAMs to those other ones, and they're 3000 megahertz. So if you change the motherboard, you change the RAM, and you keep this case, you're looking at about $665. You're saving yourself, you know, $160 or something like that. And especially at 600 bucks, like 650 bucks, that's with tax. I included California tax is like 10%. So you save a lot of money going with a different motherboard. And it's a great PC. I had a blast using it. It performed very well, and everything I did, I wasn't expecting too much out of Rise of the Tomb Raider and Dark Souls, you know what I mean? I knew better. I didn't go in thinking, oh, it's gonna run 60 frames per second at medium settings. I knew better than that. So if you don't go in with high expectations, you'll be fine. But if you're gonna play like Fortnite, CSGO, and things like that on here, yeah, you'll be fine, you know, you'll be fine. 1080p, medium settings, a couple here and there are low, you'll be fine. Let's say you plan to go for a GPU in the future and you got this CPU anyways. It's still a good CPU for gaming. It's just not gonna be one of the better ones. But it's still a good CPU. It's still on the Zen 3 architecture, but again, you're losing half of that L3 cache, which is a big deal for gaming. If you decided to go with a regular ATX sized case, something that later on you could put a graphics card in, you could get a motherboard for about 100 bucks, a B550 motherboard, a 500 watt EVGA power supply. It's 80 plus white rated. It was like $35. And if you kept the stock fan that comes with this CPU, which is more than enough for this CPU, especially if you're not going to be overclocking, and you could get that done for like $580, and that would actually be getting a normal size case. so you can add a graphics card later. And I mean, that's pretty much it for this little PC. I mean, look how small it is. It's got some weight to it, don't get me wrong, it's pretty heavy, but this was a fun build. I had a blast building in this case. This is officially the smallest case I've ever built in. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. And if you followed along putting some of these pieces in like I was, and you were just following along the video, I really hope you got through it well. I hope that I was able to help you get through it, because that's why I make these videos. If you see any of my videos in the playlist or in the home channel, you'll see that it's a lot of how-to videos. I really love helping people put things together. If they tell me, hey, this ain't working for me, I just like posting a video, and even if I only help 1 or 2 people, I'm very happy with that. That is so neat, that is so cool. And this person did it themselves. So that's a great accomplishment, that you went from you didn't do it to you did it. So congratulations, especially if you got through this. Seriously, congratulations. Down below in the comments, if you would like, because I could do something with this, if you'd like for me to throw a PCIe riser on this for when you're gaming, and when you're done gaming, take the graphics card out and go right back to the onboard graphics. If you'd like for me to make a video on how to actually do that with this case, please comment down below and I'll do it. Again guys, the 5600G, I give it my A+ approval for a CPU with onboard graphics. I think this is a great beginning. I think this is gonna lead to a whole future of better integrated graphics. You'll never beat a graphics card, I already know that. But when things go out of control like they are now with the graphics card market, it's good to know that you could still game, you know what I mean? Without having to kill yourself looking for a graphics card under $300 that would actually game. So 1660 Super, I gave $450 for it, brand new, at Micro Center. That was like 4 months ago. Yeah, there was a time I went to gave $250 for that graphics card. I saw it in the window and I got it because I was like, yeah, might as well, because everywhere else is like $550, $600. So yeah, I picked it up. So again, this is a good buy. There's no reason to pass it up if you're looking for something very similar to this. But again, if you're planning to go to a discrete graphics card in the future, go for the 5600, go for the 3700X, go for one of those processors, because believe it or not, you're not going to get the same because that L3 cache is just so limited. Just keep that in mind when you're shopping around for a new CPU or GPU combo type thing. There's a few different ways you can help the channel to actually start growing and getting bigger, and it can't do that without your support. So we really appreciate everybody out there who just likes the videos. And don't forget, there's something you could do that doesn't cost you $1 and it won't cost you a dime. Just subscribe. That's for free. So guys, until next time, like, this little thing is so cool. I don't know, I might keep it.